What's up, guys? Welcome back to Daniel Talks Football right here on YouTube. I'm Daniel. We are back with another podcast. We're here with the PR pod. It's been a little while. That is because I am a busy bloke trying to juggle everything that I'm doing, but we're still keeping consistently with the podcast and with the content for now. Will the content slow down at some point? Quite possibly. I have A-levels coming up and we're trying to get into the BBC, as you all know. But content is still going out on the channel pretty much daily, and I do appreciate all the support on that. As always, we've got two guests on the line tonight, which is a very, very special occurrence. This has been in the pipeline for quite a while now. And I'm interested to see how it goes, because I've set one rule for these two lads: it's not to kill one another. But we'll get on to those two a little bit later, because first, as with every podcast, we have to speak about a certain blue side in the Midlands. Enzo Maresca, tell me a time and a place and I'll happily get married to you, mate. Alright? I'm really, really enjoying this at the moment. And please keep it up. Don't turn into what other past managers have done and, turn awful and then scuttle back to Celtic and still be awful. Keep it up, please, because I'm really enjoying it. And there's two players at the heart of that who have come from both of these clubs. We will start with half of North London. We'll start with Tottenham Hotspur. We have the Spurs news back on the line to represent Spurs for tonight's debate, I think it's fair to call it. How are you, mate? And how are you feeling about tonight's scrap?
Yeah, well, good, mate. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, something that I haven't done before, so excited to get underway.
Absolutely. And then on the other line, we have another returning guest here. It's the man who used to run the Arsenal Fan Nation page. It's Liam. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm alright. It should be quite interesting, I fancy myself in a conversation with the Spurs fan, because I can't imagine there's much to really argue with, but
cool.
It should be fun.
Oh, we're already getting started.
Starting already.
Starting already. He definitely doesn't let the introductions last for long. I've only set out a couple of ground rules. That's nothing to say that's cancel worthy, and don't kill one another, which shouldn't be an issue, considering if they did want to kill one another, God, that would take a while. Just a plane or two or three. So you might be able to see each other on Sunday. But we are here, and we're ready to get into this. Now, we'll start with what's going on at Arsenal, because Arsenal did finish higher than Spurs in the league last season. As I'm sure.
And it took them 6 or 7 years.
Lads, if we're talking about who finished higher in the league, do I need to remind you both who finished higher in the 2015-2016 season?
Let's get on with
it. do I need to remind you who?
Yeah, we did finish above Spurs that season.
You did, but who finished first?
Some championship team.
No, some D club.
Cheers. Arsenal.
Yeah, I got one thing.
Arsenal, right. We'll start with you, lads, because I really can't win any of this debate, can I? We'll start with Arsenal. And how has the season started for the Gunners so far?
I think it's been an interesting one. I think we've got 10 or how many? 13 points from possible 15. Is it?
I'm going to.
Well, I mean, we haven't lost a game so far. It's been 5 games. It's just depending on how good my math is. So.
Yeah, 13. That's correct.
But yeah, I think considering it's been a really positive start in terms of results. It's been interesting. The talk about Arsenal has been they've not started off at their best, but I think a lot of that talk has been a consequence of an increase of expectations. If we beat Spurs on Sunday or Monday for me, that will be a better start to the season than last season for us, even though we were fantastic at the start of last season and we were all very excited about it. But I think we have been good, and I think the claims about us being not as fluid as we were last season is probably more just about how teams are setting up against us now. They're not giving us any space, and I think if either of you managed to see the Arsenal PSV game the other day, where they actually did give us a bit of space and they tried to press us.
Mm-hmm.
You saw Arsenal actually be very fluid for the first time this season. I think it's more of a result of just the space and the time they were given. So to be honest, I'm really happy with how we started the season, and especially how, Declan Rice just came into the team and just looked fantastic and just completely. He looks like he could have been there for 2 or 3 years. Like he's came into a position that Thomas Partey has played for the last few seasons, and it probably took Partey about a year or so to actually acclimatise to playing the number 6 role by himself. And Rice has came in and after 3 games looks even better. So yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with the start of the season, really.
Fair enough. And then we'll move on to having a look at this goalkeeping situation. Now, it's the media are dubbing this as a mess. It's fair to say, people can't get over the fact that Arteta has 2 top goalkeepers, and by the looks of it, what's happening to Leno when he decided to replace him with Ramsdale seems to be happening again to Ramsdale when he's trying to replace him with David Raya. What are your sort of thoughts on this situation? How do you think Arteta's managing it? Who do you think is the better goalkeeper? And is he doing the right thing?
I mean, it's a really interesting one, right? And I think the reason it's been talked about so much is just because it's just so out of character in football, or maybe not out of character, but it's just unusual. You very rarely see it with 2 very good goalkeepers. Aaron Ramsdale was he was a part of the shortlist for the Yashin Trophy. It's the top 10 goalkeepers in the world for the last season, and that's probably about right. He has been very good, and he was a big part of why we were where we were last season. He made a lot of big contributions. But David Raya is a goalkeeper that Arsenal have tracked for a number of years. Like even before we signed Ramsdale, he was our number 1 choice. Actually going back as far as the 2021 season, where we had a dreadful season and where people were taking the piss about getting relegated and talking about how Leicester were going to be taking over in the top 6 or whatever, and it was a painful time. Yeah. How times have changed, yeah.
Yeah.
But where was I?
But before making slide picks at the
yes.
Foxes, yes.
So we've been interested in him in a long time, and the connection there, if you're not sure, is Inaki Kenya, our goalkeeping coach, has a really close relationship with David Raya. Has worked with him at Brentford before, and was the one that brought him into Brentford from Blackburn. And yeah, I think he's a really good goalkeeper, and of course Ramsdale is as well. So I think every pundit and their dad has had their 6th sense on the situation. Because it's Arsenal and because it's a big club, The similar thing is happening actually at Brighton with Steele and their new goalkeeper, who I'm not going to try and bother pronouncing his name.
Verbruggen.
But Verbruggen, sorry, it's more that I just forgot his name really. But it's not actually that difficult to pronounce. But I think it's a big topic because of who we are as a club. And I think it's being somewhat overstated that David Reyes came in and played 2 games, because Ramsdale started the first 4 games of the season, and now Reyes played 2, and since then everyone seems to be losing their marbles, saying that David Reyes has already replaced Ramsdale, and I think it's a bit early to say that. If Raya plays 8-9 games on the bounce and Ramsdale doesn't get a look in, then maybe there's something to it, but I think it's a bit early to make that claim. And I think overall, as much as it is quite a hard thing for some Arsenal fans to take, because he's a fan favourite, Aaron Ramsdale, it's going to benefit the team overall. Whoever comes out, if someone is going to come out on top per se, it's surely only going to benefit the team and the level we're playing at.
Absolutely. And I do want to actually ask you on what Arteta said in the press conference, and I'd like to bring Spurs News in on this one as well. In terms of how Arteta has actually decided to come out and say that he'd be interested in substituting goalkeepers within games, and he's seen towards the final 5 or 10 minutes of a game he would like to make a goalkeeping substitution. I'll go to Spurs News first, and then we'll go back to you, Liam. Do you think that is actually something that could become normalised in football?
I'm really not too sure, to be honest, because again, it's traditionally always been you've had your main first team keeper, and then the other keeper's on the bench if anyone gets injured, and that's pretty much it. So substituting a keeper in the game is, unless they're having an absolute rotter of a game, is that really going to make much of a difference to the momentum? I'm not too sure. For example, at Spurs, if you brought on Forster instead of Vicario, is that going to change the game up and win you the game? I highly doubt it. So, not really too sure what he's saying there.
And then Liam, what do you make of Arteta's sort of ideas around substituting goalkeepers in the middle of games? Do you think it's something he'll actually do?
Well, it's interesting because any Arsenal fan who listens to Arteta's press conferences regularly knows he is prone to saying something that you just think he's absolutely lying. You know, like he says some things that you really do think he's waffling.
He's lost it.
But to be honest, I think I see where he's coming from in terms of, like, you know, I think it's a situation where Arteta is really trying to get the upper hand on everyone else more. You know, like he wants to have that just slight advantage that another team doesn't have. You know, and it's fair to say that there's no other team in the league that has two good goalkeepers like that. Maybe Man City actually, with Ortega as well. He's quite good. But,
Yes.
You know, it's pretty rare, and I do think he's probably being genuine about how he said he's wanted to substitute a keeper before and hasn't, you know, had the guts to, because it's obviously something that no one really does.
No.
And I think to be the first one to do it will be the most difficult, and it may, you know, I think if Arteta was to do that and it wasn't going to work, you know, that would be the thing that he'd be remembered for. But I don't think it's something that, like, I wouldn't rule it out for the future of football at all. You know, the way that football's going, and you know, Arteta talks about finishes all the time, about the substitutes. You know, he describes them as finishers. They come on and impact the game. And I think goalkeepers could be that too.
I'm interested. I'm interested to see where it goes. And I mean, the other side to this is obviously if Ramsdale does take over, not Ramsdale, if Raya does take over that sort of starting berth, or even if he doesn't, could you still see Ramsdale sort of moving on with now him having to share that first position? Obviously, Raya won't be the one to move on, with him obviously just being brought in. I know it's on a loan with an option to buy, but I think both parties realise that will be done permanently. Could you see Ramsdale moving on permanently, and if so, to where?
I think he is quite settled in North London, and I think it would take a lot for him to actually leave. I think he'd have to really be dislodged for him to go. As in where he could go, I think obviously it's quite murky for a certain level of player, and an English player sometimes when they want to leave now, because the money is in the Premier League. But you know, someone like Ramsdale, I think ideally he would not want to have to move to an Arsenal rival in, you know, obviously not Tottenham or anything, but like Chelsea or Man United, or you know, whoever needs a goalkeeper. But you know, I think he's been linked with Bayern in recent weeks, and I think that would make a lot of sense, really, because I mean they were going for Raya themselves until they realised they wanted to spend their money on Palhinha, which obviously didn't work out.
No.
And yeah, I think he would make a lot of sense for them, and obviously that'd be a great move for him. And I mean, hopefully it doesn't come to that situation, because I do love him and I would like him to stay.
Yeah, and I mean, I've also seen his ability to rile up opposition fan bases after some of the things he did against us a few years ago. I still remember our famous chant when you know, goalkeeper, well, every club does it. A goalkeeper kicks a ball and the fans go, "You're a very bad player." Is the child-friendly way to put it. And I still remember him turning around and sort of fist pumping the fans on the after he made that blinding save versus James Maddison on the free kick, which I'll still never forgive him for. God, that was an excellent save. And then we'll move from the bottom of the pitch to the top of the pitch for the final question on Arsenal, before we do move to the other side of North London. And that's the striker position. Do you think Arsenal do need to actually go out and get a top striker, sort of take them to the next level to be able to challenge for Champions Leagues and Premier League titles? Because we saw how close they came last year. But Jesus, while he's a good player, could they step that up a level maybe?
It's interesting because obviously Jesus is top, and I think especially since watching that game against PSV the other day, he really showed his class for the first start he's had in months. He's a really good player. I think one of the best in the league. Really, he's top. But I think because of who we're competing with in the league and the type of striker they have, it is far more appealing for most fans to have that big traditional number 9 who scores a load of goals. But I think it's key to remember the reason we scored so many goals last season was because of the way we set up and because of Gabriel Jesus, the way we shared around our goals. So many players, I think we had 4 or 5 players above 10 goals in the league. So I think it's something we could add to our arsenal. It's good. It's a good one. But
tell us that in the morning, can't you?
Yeah. But someone like Ivan Toney, I think would be great. Obviously Evan Ferguson's a top player. But he's probably going to be. I can't imagine the price that Brighton are going to be putting up for him, considering the money they've put up for a lot of players.
They left at 50 million from United, so you'd imagine they're probably want 120, 140, 160.
Yeah, I'd imagine 120 or more, and I mean I actually don't blame him. He's younger than me, and he's scoring hat-tricks in the Premier League, so
he's a bit mad, isn't he?
Yeah, he looks unreal. But I do think it will probably be something I said as mine, especially because I think, of course, Eddie Nketiah, he's a very good striker, but I don't think he's probably at the level of I think there's quite a big drop off between him and Jesus. So yeah, I think it would be something we'd be considering, and I wouldn't be opposed to it. But I don't think it's a necessary addition to the team necessarily. I don't think it would push us leaps and bounds.
Okay,
if you know what I mean.
Okay, there we go. There is the red side of North London covered, and now we'll cut over to the side where Tottenham Hotspur rule supreme, the only place where Tottenham Hotspur rule supreme. The place is covered in dust, to be honest, ever since Kane opened that trophy cabinet a year ago. Right, we'll start.
I feel like there's a bit of bias going on there.
No, there's no bias. It's just
keep it going.
No, I'm definitely not biased because I don't particularly like Arsenal either. I just will never forget how Spurs said that they were on the prowl for Leicester when we won the league, and then just proceeded to bottle it.
What questions we got then?
Do you remember that tweet? Wasn't it from
Never.
Kane? Wasn't it from Kane who tweeted out saying that? Well, yeah. Anyway, Tottenham Hotspur before he leaves the green feed. How's the season started under Ange Postecoglou? Because wow, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I mean it's gone probably better than expected. As you say there, you're impressed. I think everyone is. It's gone much better than people thought they would. Ange coming in as sort of a bit of an underdog manager, proved himself in other leagues, but obviously the Premier League's a different ball game, really. So we've been really enjoying life under Ange. He's a breath of fresh air compared to sort of the Conte and Jose eras at the club. So at the moment, can't complain, really.
Absolutely, and I mean, it has been an excellent start to the season, but we are looking at Postecoglou here because he's obviously the new thing, Was he in last time I spoke to you? He may have. I think he
might have just come in.
He might have just come in, but it was definitely before the season started. It was just after Kane had left. That's why. It was just after. It was just after Harry Kane had left, and we weren't sure what to expect from him. We were sort of going, he could be good, and you said that Spurs were willing to give him time. However, I was sort of saying again, but you've said this 7 times now. I mean, I was having a scroll through your posts earlier on actually, and I saw a thing about Perisic, and somebody went, "He's been here for 3 years," and you were like, "No, he's only been here for a year." I was like, "Has he really only been
Yeah.
there for a year?" I sat there and
Seriously, the last year with Conte and stuff just dragged on
I thought,
forever. It was a real depression in the sort of
I
Spurs
thought
fan base
Perisic
of
has
that.
actually only been there for a year. It's crazy
Yeah.
because it doesn't feel like it. You know, he feels like he's been a Spurs. All those Spurs players feels like they've been there for ages. But Zuma feels like he's been there longer than a season at this point.
Mm.
But Postecoglou has clearly changed things around with an excellent start to the season. You know, second in the league, 13 points. How good do you think he could actually be? Like, what is his ceiling? Could he go on to become Pep Guardiola levels and win you Champions Leagues? That's the trophy you win when you win the final, by the way. And, you know, these kind of tournaments. Could he go on to do that? Or is he sort of going to stop at being a top four kind of manager?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned there it's a little bit early to jump to
Hmm.
conclusions. We're only 5 games in, 13 points, so similar start to Arsenal. So yeah, it'd be way too early to jump to any outrageous claims. But look, he's brought a positive feeling to the club. Everyone's sort of happy again. We're finally playing that sort of front foot attacking football that Tottenham have really been known for quite a lot of the history. So he hasn't had any massive tests yet. You could argue Man United was big, but you can see how Man United have been this season. They've been shambolic, really. So
Hmm.
you can argue that wasn't much of a test anyway. Um, but yeah, look, I think he's one of those managers that you want, like you wish him to take you far because he seems like an all round nice bloke. Spurs clearly trust him. They've given him a 4 year deal, so it's not one of those Conte things where he's only in it for one season then gives up. It's clearly a project, so you never know with the time given. I don't see why he can't become a top manager.
No, okay. And then obviously, I do want to move on to the man who we've already mentioned, Harry Kane. Obviously, when we last recorded, his departure had just been made official. But Daniel Levy recently has come out and said that there's a buyback clause within that deal. Now, I do believe it's not an actual buyback clause, and it's just a right of first refusal. So, if he is to move to any, I think that's only for the Premier League as well, if I'm correct. What is actually going on with Harry Kane, and it is possible for him to return to Spurs after 2 or 3 years at Bayern? Do you think it will happen, and sort of what are the conditions surrounding that deal?
Yeah, so for a bit of context, Spurs had a sort of fan forum thing, a little sit down with the board. So Daniel Levy, you had Sonny there, and the women's captain Bethany England, and the
Yeah.
women's head coach as well. And the fans are asking those questions. And as you say, the question came up: is there a buyback clause for Kane? Because there have been a few sort of questions here and there from people, and he said, yeah, there was, but then pretty much a couple of hours later or the next morning, a lot of the sources around the club are coming out saying, well, hang on a minute, it's not really a buyback clause, but as you say, a sort of right of first refusal, a chance to match a fee that Bayern accept if Tottenham want to.
Hmm.
Um, Again, then the future relies on Kane and would he want to come back or not. But at the moment, I just don't think it's anything we should be even considering. We've got to come to terms with yes, Kane is probably one of our, if not our greatest player in Tottenham Hotspur history, in my opinion. But he's gone now, and we need to get over it. And if I'm being totally honest, I'm over it as well. Sort of
Hmm.
forgotten about him now. Let him do his thing in Germany. If he wins, he wins. If he loses, he loses. So just move forward with it. Maybe in a couple of years, if he wants to come back, we can consider it. But again, in a couple of years, he's going to be going 33, 34,
Hmm.
35. So is he going to be at the top of his game? It's a bit of a different question. But for now, I think we just let him play his time out in Germany and be more concerned with ourselves.
And obviously, you're looking at that striker situation. Last time you were on here, we spoke about getting in a new striker. We were speaking about Gift Orban as a possibility. Looking back on the summer window, now Richarlison has, scored a goal, which came few and far between last season. Still got more than Mudryk though, which I'm sure both of you will enjoy with no Chelsea representative here tonight. Um, how do you look back on that decision not to bring in a main striker? Obviously, we've seen Son do that as well so far this season and before in the past when Kane was injured. How do you look back on the decision to not bring in any new star striker? And do you think Richarlison will be able to sort of take that position alongside Son and either Solomon or Kulusevski?
Yeah, I mean, it was quite disappointing when you look at how much we got for Kane. It was like 120 million quid in the end. So you sort of would have thought maybe we can bring a top striker in. We brought in Brennan Johnson, but he's not a number
No, of
nine.
course.
He can play there if he has to, but he's more of a winger.
Hmm.
Again, we paid 50 odd million for Richie, so you'd like to think it would be his time to step up. Son can play there too. So yeah, it was disappointing we didn't get anyone, but I sort of had a sneaky feeling we never would, so I never really got my hopes up. And the prices for strikers nowadays are ridiculous, with Chelsea splashing cash on literally anyone they can find. So again, you see like Kolo Muani that Spurs are interested in. He went to PSG for 80, 90 million in
Yeah,
the end. You think we're just not going to pay something like that. And we can't match the wages that PSG are going to give, like £500,000 a week or whatever. So I was disappointed, yeah, but again, it's something we can come to in January if we have to. Just see how it plays out for now. Ange himself said that literally from his first couple of weeks at Spurs, he was always planning for life without Kane, because he sort of knew deep down and through chats with Daniel Levy that Kane probably 90% wasn't going to be there at the end of the window. So Ange prepared for it, and I think if he really did want a striker, he would have got one, but he obviously wasn't 100% sure. So we sort of signed around that. And again, as I say, Sonny can play there, and hopefully it's a bit of a better season for Richie.
for sure. And then last but not least, I want to look to the future with Tottenham, because do you think things are finally moving forward? We've had a lot of seasons where it's either been backwards or steady progress ever since Mauricio Pochettino left the club, in all honesty. You look at the managers you've had since, people like Jose Mourinho and Antonio Conte, winners, yes, but people who definitely haven't progressed the club from that position of being in that Champions League final. Um, are things finally moving forward, or is there possibly a slight trepidation, you could say, within that Spurs fan base to fully believe in the project again?
Yeah, I think I'd say 99% of the fans are fully behind Ange. There's always that 1% who are a little bit odd in that aspect, but
Hmm.
everyone that I know has backed him. People were sceptical when he came in, and even I was sceptical when he came in. But look, he's hit the ground running. He's doing well. He's such a lovable guy as well. Everyone's behind him. You can never get too far ahead of yourself at Spurs and in football in general, I guess. But the atmosphere is positive right now. So living in the moment is good to see. And I think the general consensus around the fan base is that we are on that sort of steady way up. There's going to be a couple hits every so often. Sheffield United was very, very close at the weekend just gone.
Hmm.
So there's always going to be ups and downs. But he might he might be the one to take us further than we have been in the last 10, 15 years, and I hope he is with any manager that comes in. But it's just good to see where we're at a club and sort of the atmosphere around it at the moment.
Absolutely. Well, there we go. There is a very big first section done, having to cover two clubs, of course. We'll take a short break here before we come back to let the arguments commence between these two. So let's do. Right, we are back from the break to come back and to have a bit of an argument over Tottenham and Arsenal. So we'll start off with a question that's going to anger both of these people. How this is going to work is, we're going to ask a simple question, and whoever makes the more compelling argument will end up winning that section. And what we've got, I think, 6 or 7 talking points. So whoever wins it overall, the prize. What's the really good prize?
Spurs could a Spurs fan win a trophy? Be a big moment for them.
Here we go.
Here we go. The prize is. I. It's not like I can say I really like the football club, because I don't like either of you. I hadn't thought about this one ahead of time. What should the prize be, lads? What can I give you? And no, I'm not sending you a £3 Amazon trophy to the post, Spurs News.
Awkward.
I know. I will post the video on what's going on at your club first, because that's such a reward.
That's all right, Mum. I'll get the most
Yes.
views anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
really.
We'll start off then with the colour of London. Let's start with Spurs News on this one. What colour is London and why?
Silly question, really, isn't it? White, of course. North London in particular, seen as Arsenal didn't even come from there in the first place, so
Here we
sort of
go.
tried to barge their way in. Last, 6, 7 seasons, consistently finished above them, Champions League. Um, it was hard to remember they even really existed for the last, I don't know, 10 years or so. So White, of course.
And then last season they came back.
Yeah, it was just a one-off though, wasn't it, really? We all knew they weren't going to win the title. Didn't have it in them.
Okay, Liam, what colour is North London and why?
Well, I do appreciate the comedy is it's great. You'll love to hear it, but obviously it's not white because I mean, the only reason Tottenham have been relevant over the last 10 years is because they've been ahead of Arsenal. It's been their only claim to fame, really. And I mean, I'm going to bring up the stat here. Obviously, Arsenal's total trophies won 48, Spurs 26, and Spurs haven't won a trophy since 2008. Is it? Is it? Just you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's 2008.
Yeah, those community shields counted though.
Fair enough. But I think I'm sure
they did win an FA Cup in that time, to be fair, which even we have done.
Don't even start bringing you into it.
yeah. London is blue because Leicester City are there.
Leicester run London.
Absolutely.
It's obviously red.
It's obviously red. Right. The trophies debate is a good one. It's one that Spurs just cannot overcome. Because it's not even like, you've had chances to win trophies. I think of the Champions League final. I think of the 2015-16 Premier League season. There were chances for Spurs to win trophies and they didn't. I think, you know what, this one I will crown Liam the winner. And I think for now we can say that London is red.
I said from the very start there's a bias. I said it.
the simple reason, right? Now, the reason we're saying London in general, and the reason there's no Chelsea representative in this, is because they'd be laughed at. Did we not see that they finished in the bottom half of the Premier League last year? So before any Chelsea fans pipe up, don't bother. I don't care. You finished in the bottom half of the Premier League. You do not deserve a place in this argument. And you've also spent like £1 billion on players and have signed nobody. So, yeah.
I was going to say, Todd Bahili still tried to pay for someone to come onto him, but we still didn't accept it.
I would always accept a bribe. So, if he wanted to slip me, one of those 8-year contracts on $200,000 a week, cool. I would have said London is whatever colour we wanted it to be. But no, I think for this time we will go with London being red. However, I did want to add a spin on this because obviously Spurs do look like they are possibly coming back under Ange Postecoglou. So we'll start with Liam on this one as we started with Spurs last time. Not that it gave an advantage. What colour will London be in 10 years' time? Now, if you want to, you don't have to go for Arsenal. You don't have to go for Spurs. You could go for Brentford. You could go for Chelsea. You could go for any of the others you please. But what colour do you think London will be in 10 years' time? You could go for Spurs if you wanted to.
I'm going to say yellow. Watford.
We don't see it. No. Still got PTSD from the playoff semi-final.
No, I mean, look, unless Spurs do the impossible and win some trophies over the next 10 seasons, I can't see it being anything other than Arsenal. Maybe Chelsea because they've got a crazy amount of money. It could be blue, and they could actually, get their act together. But at the moment, the way we're going with Arteta, I can see us winning things very soon. And I think Spurs potentially. I honestly, I think Postecoglou looks like a very good coach, but I think there's a lot of history to rewrite there if they want to make London white overall. So I think red.
I must say that wasn't very definitive, so I think you've got a chance here. Spurs News, what colour will London be in 10 years' time?
might surprise you. I'm going to go red, but not for red for Arsenal. For Leighton Orient, I reckon they're making a storm through all the leagues. They're coming straight to the top of the Prem. Now, of course, I'm going to say white.
Mm-hmm.
Look, we've got the momentum with Postecoglou at the moment, and don't get me wrong, Arsenal have looked good for the last year maybe at a push. So I think it's going to be a big battle between us two. Chelsea at the moment, it shows that spending money in football doesn't win you everything. It might win you some things. Look at City over the last 10, 15 years, but it doesn't buy you instant success. So I'd say Arsenal and Tottenham are on sort of the path to glory at the moment. But I do think Spurs will just come out on top.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there we go then. I must say, regardless of I'm keeping my own opinions out of this because that isn't fair. That isn't fair. I think Spurs News, you made the better argument there. So London will be red for Leighton Orient. No, I'm joking. London will be white in 10 years' time.
I think I just got points taken off me for trying to be a little bit more.
Yeah, neutral. You did. Why bother?
I don't know. I should just be a wind up.
Why are you saying that it could be white? That's not going to help
I gave Postecoglou credit, and then all my credit flew out the window.
Absolutely, yeah. London will be white in 10 years' time. Based on those arguments, I want to specify that those are not the personal opinions of Daniel Talks Football, and
we'll come back to this in 10 years' time.
We'll come back to this in 10 years' time with Spurs being League One and battling with Leighton Orient for points.
Leicester would still be in the Championship.
I'll take Championship over League One, mate, any day of the week.
You're lucky to be in the top 4 leagues, mate.
Right, lads. I think it's time to move on to the one that is going to cause some issues. A combined Arsenal/Spurs 11. Now, the best way to do this is to go position by position, and obviously, the person who gets the most players into the final team will win the combined 11. I guess it's fair to say. We'll do the manager as well because I think that's only fair to the manager. However, it's only fair to start off with the goalkeepers now. Liam, which goalkeeper do you want to put forward for Arsenal to probably get into the team? I think it's fair to say.
I mean, realistically, both of them have a lot more pedigree than Spurs goalkeepers right now. I mean, but I think for argument's sake, the one that's been in it longer, we'd have to say Aaron Ramsdale.
Okay, so Spurs News. Do you want to argue with Aaron Ramsdale as the goalkeeper? Or are you going to lie down and accept that one?
Never going to lie down and accept. Never. I think Ramsdale might be one of the most overrated goalkeepers in the league. Seriously, this guy is the biggest camera keeper I've ever seen. He's always making sure he's getting his Instagram shots for after the game or his Twitter photos. This guy, literally, the ball could come straight in his face and he's still jumping to the side and sticking a hand out. He's just all over the shop. Don't get me wrong, made a few good saves, but he's a big old camera keeper. David Raya I can't really bring into the conversation because I think we previously mentioned he's only really played 2 games. And Vicario, Spurs goalkeeper, came in this season with pretty low expectations. Nobody really knew what he was about, but he's proved himself in these first 5 games. I had doubts about him, and I'll happily admit that. I was wrong there. Vicario's been top class for us. I wouldn't say he's put a single foot wrong yet. None of the goals for errors or anything like that. More importantly, our manager hasn't thought about subbing us off in the 60th minute, so I could say he's pretty confident in Vicario there.
It's a good argument for Vicario. However, longevity, the bloke has played 5 games. And
he has, yeah. But how many Instagram shots has he got in that time? Not as many.
Shall we have a look?
I mean, yeah, I was going to say, you talked about David Raya only playing 2 games than you previously. Yeah. You could start talking about Vicario, who's played 5 games.
You may have done yourself in there. I am currently...
If we're basing it off this season, I'm saying Vicario. If we're basing it off of longevity in the Prem, I would happily say Raya, because Raya is a good keeper. But if we're basing it off this season, I'm going Vicario.
I think I think I do have to go Ramsdale, simply because...
I mean, if he wants Raya, I'm happy to have Raya, to be honest. I think if that's more of a... if that suits him better.
He won't take Rayo instead, will he? Because he still wears red on his chest. If you want to go for Rayo, we can go for Rayo instead. But I think either way, sadly, simply because Vicario hasn't shown himself to even be a top keeper for long enough, I think I will have to give the point to Arsenal. But I'm happy to go with whichever keeper you want.
If we're losing on this and we're not going Vicario, I'd much rather Raya than Ramsdale.
Okay. We will have Raya. To be fair, I'm not surprised he said that because he has only played 2 games, so he probably doesn't quite have red running through his body yet. That is how blood works.
He also rejected Spurs. He also rejected Spurs to come to Arsenal. So
Spurs never put a bid in for him properly, so he never rejected us.
Sure. Whatever. Let's just leave it now, man.
All right, lads.
Brentford said 40 mil and we walked off.
and they got him for 30. Potato.
Alright, we actually got him on loan, really, but you know.
Well, yeah, 30. We'll move on to left back. Now, I think there could be a debate to be had at left back. I'm going to presume the left backs are Zinchenko and Udogie.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. Who wants to go first on this one? Spurs News, you can go first on this one because we let Liam have pick his goalkeeper, which didn't even end up getting in, to be fair. Why do you think Udogie is better than Zinchenko?
Look, Udogie came in this year. It's his first year in the Premier League, despite us buying him last year. Loaned him straight back to his club in Italy. I think it was Udinese.
Yes.
He's hit the ground running. There's been a breath of fresh air there. He was brought in with the thought that he was going to play sort of a left wing back role when Conte was there, but he's come into a Postecoglou system that doesn't use that 5 back, so he's slotted in straight at left back. And look, he's been top class, a brilliant left back, and he's still only 20 years old. He's great entertainment to watch. He's just sort of he seems comfortable in the Premier League. He's one of those players, and there's not many of them that come in and just immediately look really good. So he's a top one for the future. He's probably one of those players that if he was English and at City, everyone would be raving about. But yeah, he looks like a great one from the future and doesn't cry after he misplaces a couple of passes.
I do like Udogie. I do think Udogie is a very, very good player. Why should Zinchenko get into this team over Udogie then, Liam? Because I think that is a very good argument, and I must say, yeah, he does cry a lot less. I'm fed up of seeing Zinchenko cry at this point.
Well, I mean, if you're suggesting that Zinchenko crying over his country being invaded is a problem, then I think there's another separate discussion.
Not
here,
just over that.
We said no cancel culture. No.
That's...
Getting Daniel cancelled. That might not do me well. I'm thinking the point might go to Spurs here. But I tell you what, no, Zinchenko, look, he is a fantastic, fantastic player, and there's a reason he has managed to play for Premier League winning sides for the past 4 or 5 seasons. He's got 4 or 5 Premier League trophies under his belt. He's absolutely fantastic. You saw the way when he came in last season, he just transformed the way we play, coming into midfield and dictating play. He's so good, and he's one of the biggest reasons why we were so close to challenging Manchester City. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't get the feeling that Udogie's going to be blasting Spurs into a title challenge this season. And I think Zinchenko had that impact for us, so I think that is a big reason why I'd have him in the team. And also, not only what he brings on the ball, but just his leadership skills as well. He's a huge character on the pitch. He has a big impact in that dressing room, and I think he's a really top player, and there's no way I'd be replacing him for some player who's played 5 games in the Premier League.
I must say, I wrote Udogie down about a minute ago. I think you didn't do yourself any favours, Liam. I
think that's a little bit of bias coming in there, Daniel.
I think I do think Udogie is the better player. I've looked at what Zinchenko has done, and I'm not that convinced.
Look, feels like incredible short-term bias in my opinion, but
I've appreciated Udogie's class for a little while now.
watched plenty of
Yeah,
United games.
he's been.
Yeah, I watched like 5 minutes of highlight reels of Adoji last season. Thank you.
Fair enough.
And I rate him really highly on those 5 minutes.
I tell you what, if I'm gonna lose out to someone in the Spurs team, Udogie, he's a good player.
He is a good player, so I think we'll take that one. We'll move on to the centre backs now. Do I want to do left centre back, right centre back? Not really. I mean, what two centre backs would you both put forward? I'm coming into this with an idea of what the centre back pairing might be. However, I'm open to be changed. We'll start with Liam. Liam, do you want to argue your two centre backs who you would choose here?
I mean, for me, it's simple. Saliba and Gabriel.
Okay.
I think they were a fantastic partnership last season. Unfortunately, when Saliba wasn't fit, you saw a huge difference in the way we played. And I think it was more not from a defensive point of view, but the way we played out from the back when we lost him. But I mean, Saliba for sure has to be in this team. He's one of the best centre backs in the world. At the age of, I think he's still 21. He's very young, and he's fantastic. He's a Rolls Royce, really. He's brilliant. Almost no one can touch him defensively. He is so good. I genuinely, I could just sit here and wax superlatives.
I think it's fair to say Saliba is in, and I don't think Spurs News will have any qualms with Saliba being in this side.
And I think Gabriel as well is a very underrated defender. Outside of Arsenal, I think he was widely considered for a few months to be a lot. He actually performed better than Saliba, but I think because the media preferred to talk about Saliba, because I'm not really sure. I think Gabriel's a slightly less easy on the eye to watch. He's very physical and probably a little bit less elegant than Saliba, but very good defender. And certainly, when it comes to Spurs defenders, I can't say I know much about Mickey Mouse, or whatever his name is. And then Christian Romero, I just don't really rate at all, really. I mean, he's got quality, but I think he's so rash. I just think he's very unreliable. I mean, we saw that Gabriel was somewhat like that in his past. Maybe it's to do with having the right base, the right centre back next to him. But personally, I can't see how any Tottenham defender comes in here.
Okay, Spurs News. You've got one centre back spot to argue for here, because I think, as I say, Saliba is into this. I'm going to presume you're going to argue the case for Romero to get in, but you might go Van de Ven. You might also go for Eric Dyer. I mean, if you decide to go for that one, then good luck. But which centre back do you think should be partnering Saliba in the side, and why do you think they're better than Gabriel?
Yeah, I think I need to wish myself luck for Eric Dyer's case. Jesus. Just going to the left centre back quick. I will say Saliba, because Saliba, look, he's a fantastic young player, good centre back. Been unlucky with injuries, which is a shame for him, but good for Tottenham as a whole, I guess. But look, he's a top player. Van de Ven, again, another top young centre back coming in from Germany. One of the quickest players in the league last season, and quickest defender by far as well at Bayern Munich. In the Bundesliga, sorry. But I just think that Saliba currently has proved himself a bit more. He's had that extra season or two under his belt. And Van de Ven, come the end of the season, I'll be arguing his case all the way, but for now I'd say Saliba. Moving on to the right centre-back, Gabriel, I can't see him getting anywhere near this team. There's a reason why he's made his international debut, I think, about 2 weeks ago. And even though he's nearly 26, Christian Romero has won a World Cup. He helped that defence get to the final. And look, at the end of the day, there's a reason why Lionel Messi has been quoted calling him the best centre back in the world, and that's because he is a top tier centre back. So he gets in that team ahead of Gabriel for me.
Ooh, I'm not sure, boys. That's a difficult one. Saliba, obviously.
Are you going to disagree with Lionel Messi talking about a player? I'm not sure.
Lionel Messi is the GOAT. Liam, what's your response to that one?
Well, I mean, Messi can't exactly be labelled as the most truthful person. He came out saying that PSG didn't support him after the World Cup, even though he got an ovation at the training session afterwards. So I mean, he's a bit of a waffler, to be honest. This guy, he's a fantastic player, but don't trust his mouth.
I was going Gabriel, but I think that statement simply there, Romero is into the team. Sorry, Gabriel, if you're listening. If you drop me a message, I'll happily overturn the decision. As I say, it doesn't take much. 5 run a podcast appearance, and I'll say they're the best centre back in the world. But I think for now, we're going to have to go with Romero, and that moves us on very nicely into the right back position. Who are you guys going for? And state your cases. We'll start with Spurs news on this one.
So I've got a couple of options here. Jed Spence, who's played about 2 minutes for Spurs in his entire career.
And is that
Emerson Royale?
Is Spence on loan?
Leeds on loan now. Yeah. You got Emerson as well, but the one I'll put forward is Pedro Porro, signed from Sporting last January, in the transfer window right at the end. Look, he didn't have the greatest start with Spurs, but he's definitely picked up a lot, and he's proved that he can play sort of that right back role. Going forward, he's a brilliant player. He could even be used on the wing, which some fans have been asking for, which I can't see happening, but I can see why sort of they're looking at it. Mm-hmm. And Postecoglou saying playing that sort of similar tactics to Pep, where you bring them fullbacks inside, or inverted fullbacks as they're called now, and he's sort of doing really well in that role, and he's got that quick pace to recover if he has to track back for whatever reason. Pops up with a goal every now and then as well, so can't complain with him. So Porro's going ahead for me.
Okay, so Porro for Spurs. And Liam, who do you have in as the Arsenal representative?
I mean, I'll obviously have Ben White, but I mean, on Pedro Porro, there's a reason Spurs fans are saying that they want to play him at right wing is because he can't really defend. So, he's very Nunez Tavares.
Can Ben White attack?
In terms of that, and Ben White
I think I saw a clip of
attack.
Ben White the other day. Didn't Arsenal post a video of him losing the ball and then just kicking it back to the goalkeeper, and they were praising him for that. That shows Ben White's level, really.
I honestly have no idea what clip you're talking about, but I mean, he came in at right back last season and was absolutely fantastic going forward as well. He's a real threat. He overlaps Bukayo Saka. But from a defensive point of view, I mean, you can't have a right back that can't actually defend. Pedro Porro, I remember, 6-1 at Newcastle. He was an absolute disaster.
He's putting out the big guns.
Genuinely terrible. I couldn't believe it. Like, he just wouldn't check his shoulder at all. It's like he just purposely did not want to defend. Whereas, Ben White, he's been absolutely brilliant, It's a disgrace that he doesn't get into the England squad, and I think there's clearly something...
There's a reason he doesn't get into the
motivation
England squad.
To that. No, I mean, he was in the World Cup squad, and he obviously left for some reasons other than football, but he is...
Because he couldn't
fantastic.
play it. I got a genuine question though. Genuine question now though, no comedy. Is Ben White actually a right back? Because I seem to remember at Leeds he was always playing centre back. Why is he playing right back?
He's playing right back because he's been absolutely brilliant since he's went in there. Genuinely, he's been fantastic. If you've watched Arsenal games, you know he's been absolutely great. He can do exactly what's needed of him. He can play. He can play inverted next to the midfielder. He can overlap. He can defend. He can attack. He can do it all. And Pedro Porro can.
He can lose the ball and kick it into no man's land.
Pedro Porro can't bloody check over his shoulder, man. He's got 180-degree vision.
I'm loving the little jibes you two have for one another because the hatred runs so deep and it's absolutely hilarious. I've got no idea who I'm going to choose it. Because both those arguments.
Oh, come on, Pedro Porro, for God's sake.
One of them
Ben
can't.
White. What?
One of them can't attack, and one of them's a centre back.
I was going to say one of them's not even a right back. What are we talking about here?
Yeah, but
what do you mean one's not a right back? One of them's a bloody right winger playing.
Pedro is a right wing back as well. So
he's adapted well. He's adapted well to the Postecoglou system.
Listen, what's happened is he's not good enough to be a winger, so he's been put at full back, and he can't defend. So.
Either whoever I choose here, the other one is absolutely going to hate me.
The defending isn't as important in the Postecoglou system. That's why he's good going forward.
If you think the best managers in the league would pick Pedro Porro at right back over Ben White, you're absolutely having a laugh.
Lads,
that's why
Especially in a
Arteta
back four.
isn't the best
Lads,
manager in the Premier League.
I have made a decision, and because of the style of football that Arsenal play and how that right back can slot into the centre back system to play the famous elbow, as me and Liam have spoke about before, I am sadly going to have to pick Ben White on this occasion.
Come on.
That's criminal. So what you're saying, Daniel, is your knowledge is up there with sort of Gareth Southgate and picking him for the England squad.
Look, I think Ben White is a difficult one because neither of them are top class right backs. I think both of you will agree that you could upgrade in that area for both the sides.
Would your mind have changed if I brought Emerson to the table?
Absolutely not. Let's not take the piss here.
I do love his dance moves and Instagram previews, to be fair. He's a quality entertainer.
I love it.
I do love that he does no background research into his Instagram stories. And that if I wanted to, I could pull up a clip of you slating him and saying he needs to leave the club. But
Never.
yes.
Never.
do you want me to? So yes, no, I will reluctantly pick Ben White on that one. But we will move into the midfield and into the defensive midfield position where, again, Spurs news, you might be up against it. Because we've got Declan Rice in this one, Liam. He's quite good, isn't he?
Yeah, he's alright, you know. No, obviously he's fantastic, and I think coming into a team where his responsibility is now slightly lessened, you know, at West Ham, you know, it was pretty much just give the ball to Declan Rice and hope he bloody wins us the game. Since he's came into Arsenal, what he's had to do in this system has, you know, it's probably a little bit more complicated than what he was asked to do at West Ham, but a lot more specific.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can just see how much quality he has. You know, from a defensive point of view, he's tracking back, his timing of his challenges, his positioning is fantastic. But then also on the ball, he's just so good at moving the ball across the pitch, you know, receiving from the defenders, getting it out to the wide players, and dribbling with the ball as well. Obviously, I think it was more of a feature of his game for West Ham when you saw him driving out of defence, because, I mean, we're not really in a defensive position for the most part of our games, but yeah, he's been absolutely brilliant, and you know, he's made Partey look not that good. You know, I mean Partey is a very good midfielder, to be honest, but he's also not available when you need him to be. And Declan Rice is he is the perfect.
Because he's normally in prison. That's why.
Boy, allegations, man, allegations.
Yeah,
allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly, massively.
Oh my word!
But Spurs needs to even want to argue with Declan Rice here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who do you want to argue with?
Basuma. He's been a different player this season, different gravy for us. Look, last season, Conte, I don't know what he was doing with his life.
Again, if we're speaking about allegations.
Yeah, but there was no official statements having to be put out by Met Police and that, so I don't have to worry about that. Allegations at the end of the day. But look, Basuma for us this season has been really, really good. He won man of the match in his first two games for us against Brentford and United, I believe. And he did that for a reason. He was a top signing from Brighton. Shame about a couple of injuries he picked up last year. And Conte ball as a whole was pretty much dreadful. So he's been a different player for us this year. Feels like a new signing. And again, you've got to bring certain aspects into it. Declan Rice cost, 100 million, 110 million, something like that. Basuma was about 25 from Brighton. So you have to factor that into it, value for money. Is Declan Rice worth 110 million? I'm not sure if he is. For me, he's a good player, but he doesn't get enough goals or assists for the sort of player he is. So Basuma, for me, he's been top for Tottenham this season. Probably, I'd say our second best player, maybe third behind Maddison or Son. So for me, he goes in that team ahead of Rice.
Is Basuma a proper DM?
I think he's adapted to that role really well. That's where he plays for us. He sits in that DM role, so I'd say, yeah, he is.
I'm not sure what number 6 is judged on their goals and assists. You don't hear Serge Busquets, you know, how many goals does Serge Busquets score every season. So, I mean, I don't think it's really...
Yeah, but who pays 110 million for a holding midfielder?
Yeah, but
and once again, that's still not relevant when you're talking about behind 11. It's who's better than the other.
But you have to factor that in. You have to factor that in.
You really don't. It's who's the better player.
Well, you're
United is
talking about
obviously better.
factor value for money. Value for money, Basuma wins that all day.
I mean,
This isn't combined 11 of best value for money. You know.
if it was, Basuma would go in. However,
yeah, that's fair.
The reasoning is, even with Spurs spending 20-25 million on Basuma, if they would have been in that competition to get Rice, which was they weren't. It was the summer before and all that. They wouldn't have spent that extra money elsewhere, and the squad leave would have gone great. That's 8 million from your back pocket. Thank you very much. For me, it's not even what they've currently done for the clubs, because both of them, Basuma obviously did have last year for Spurs, but obviously that wasn't something that you probably want me to take into account for this. I'm going to have to give this to Declan Rice.
English bias again.
Basuma barely kicked the fucking football last season. Don't see how he could get in.
I'm going to have to give this one to Declan Rice. I think he is a very, very good footballer, and I mean, if you want to talk about English bias, I'm sure when we reach the attacking midfielder area, the English bias may or may not play a factor. But for now, I'm going to have to go for Declan Rice. And on that, we'll move into the centre mid position, in what is probably one of the longest videos to ever be released on the channel. But we're continuing to strive forward onto the centre midfielder position. Which player do each of you want to put forward for your respective sides?
Well, I mean, it depends. Are you saying so? We've got one midfielder and then one attacking midfielder.
Yes.
I was gonna say I think I've included 2 cams, if that's possible.
Can you make one of them a centre midfielder?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'd be in the same boat really. So.
What about 2 attacking midfielders for each of you?
Yeah,
Ederson and Maddison are both different gravy, man.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm honestly happy to not really have a huge debate if we're just going to put both of those two.
Same here. Odegaard is top notch.
Yeah, I wasn't going to argue with Odegaard, and while James Maddison I would be happy to give advice to in certain areas of life, aka stay off Twitter or X, I am more than happy to pull up your Twitter, James. Actually, oh no, I do still have the app.
I'm sure Spurs fans will say the same after his tweets about Gareth Bale.
When he was about 17 or whatever.
Yeah, I think we've got something on him as a 25-year-old that still makes him look like a 17-year-old. If we scroll back far enough, not that I'm holding a grudge, I am. And I scroll back and I see the tweet that goes along the lines of rubbish. Watch and analyse the game properly and stop writing headlines like that, which makes fans pile on with negativity. Play like that and we'll be absolutely fine. Created numerous brilliant chances and win comfortably on another day. Well, James, we won't. So I am putting you in this team, but stay off Twitter. Moving on to the left wing position. Now, this is going to be a difficult one, because we have 2 of the best left wingers in the league. If not the 2 best left wingers in the league, I would. Yeah, they're the 2 best left wingers in the league, aren't they, lads? I can't think of anybody who.
Yeah, I'd probably say they are.
Tips the 2.
Maybe Grealish on his day, but.
I still think he's better as an attacking midfielder, so I do.
It also depends what you define Marcus Rashford as, really. But.
So, oh god, right, this is going to be difficult. Spurs news, we'll start with you. Why should Heung-min Son, on the presumption we're going from, you never know, you might fancy a little Welsh lad, Brennan Johnson. Why should Heung-min Son get into this side?
Sonny's probably the best Asian player to ever grace the game. He's a top player internationally as well. He's been their captain for some time now. Look, he's a Golden Boot winner a couple of seasons ago for a reason, consistently pumping out the goals. He's just a top all-round player, can play anywhere really across that front 3. You saw against Burnley, he played in that striker position and bagged a hat-trick, which helped us to that 5-2 win there at Turf Moor. But he's just such a quality player, and he's shown that for so many years. I think this is his 8th season in the Premier League now. And he's consistently just been top of his game. I've got no bad words to say about him. He's our new captain for a reason. He's a leader at Spurs and someone that probably the youth kids will look up to. So I don't think there's any argument there that Sonny is just the better left winger there.
It's a difficult one because they are both in different stages of their career. However, I'm willing to hear out the Martinelli case. Why should Martinelli make this team over Son? Because I'm really torn, because comparing a player who, if anything's possibly just left the prime of his career, to a player who hasn't even entered it yet.
Well, I mean, Martinelli is absolutely on the rise, and what a player he was last season. I think it was really underreported how good he was, really. I think probably because the main guy who was, helping us on our title chase was Saka, obviously being an English winger, young English winger. Obviously that's going to make the headlines, but I think Martinelli had a fantastic season. He 15 non-penalty goals from a wide position is just unreal. Obviously Son will know something about non-penalty goals from his past, but he also did sort of just disappear last season, I think, when Spurs were absolutely in the mud, and he just seemed to sit in there with them. So I think it shows a lot about, when the team's not performing, he's not lifting them up. And Martinelli, during our worst period last season, when we were really struggling, we had those draws against Southampton, West Ham, he was our best player over that period. He was the one scoring goals and getting us back into it. But yeah, he's a top player. He scores goals, he gets assists. Very all-rounded player. Brings a lot from a defensive point of view as well. The way he defends, the way he presses. He supports our fullbacks really well, especially because when we've got Zinchenko on that left-hand side, he's not great defensively, and does need support at times, and he really does help and provide that.
It's a compelling argument.
I think Martinelli he's entering the right stage of his career where Son is starting to drop off.
Absolutely, and I'm not going to disagree with that at all. However, it's a really, really difficult one, this one, because you've got two top players in front of you. Prior to this, I have mentioned the longevity of these players, and that is somewhere where Martinelli does lack. Son has been there for years doing it for Spurs, and because of that, and you've got to look at the backgrounds. Martinelli, Brazilian lad, Son. Who have you ever heard who's played football in South Korea?
Exactly.
But bar Kim Min-jae,
he's breaking the mold over there.
Bar Kim Min-jae,
yeah, Kim Min-jae as well. Yeah,
there's not many. So, and I am looking at this and it's very red dominated, so I wouldn't mind to get some white in there. I'm going to give this one to Heung-min Son.
Yeah, I could deal with that. It's okay. Son's a good player.
Yeah, he is. And we'll move from there over to the right wing. Now, there was another reason I wanted to give this to Son, because I'm not quite sure if Kulusevski and Solomon combined are better than Saka.
There's no real competition, really, is there? Kulusevski had a very good 6 months when he first came in on loan, and since then he's not really had.
He does have a really good chant though, so you do have to put that forward.
Yeah, that is valid. That is valid. But obviously Saka's just top. He's one of the best wingers in the world at his age, and he's only going to get better. So I don't really think I actually need to put an argument forward if Spurs News wants to argue Man or Solomon or Kulusevski for Saka.
Do you want to, or the word sack is already down on my team sheet, so it just needs an A to be added.
Yeah, look, Liam brought up there. If you'd asked me for Kulu's first 6 months at the club, I probably still would have said Kulusevski then, just because he was top tier, and unlike other players, he hit the ground running coming into the Premier League, was bagging goals, assists, scoring against City, and I think was his debut or his first start for the club. But last season, he did sort of fall off a lot like the rest of the players at Spurs with Conte ball. So, Saka is different grade. He's a great player. It's still really shocking to me that he somehow started off as a left back or a right back. I can't remember. A bit like Gareth Bale-esque. But he's a great player. Great player.
There we go. And then last but not least, we do have the striker before we do actually have to decide the manager. So the striker for this team. You've got Gabriel Jesus. We've got Richarlison. 2 Brazilian lads. Spurs news. Richarlison.
Yeah, so Richie is Brazil's number 9 and has been for the last couple of years for a reason. He's a great player on his day. I think recently, I know he hasn't been all that, but he has said in interviews and stuff that he sort of needs help psychologically. So maybe there's something going on mentally there, which is sort of a explanation for his poor form. But look, he came on against Sheffield United, literally won us the game single-handedly. He was only on for 10, 15 minutes. He scored and assisted, all with that pressure on his back. Of his sort of poor international form recently, and I really do think he's going to bounce back. And look, if you come back to his time at Everton, he was probably their main man, and half the time wasn't even playing at striker, despite being their top goal scorer, because I think Calvert-Lewin was normally up there. So for me, Richie goes in solely for the fact he is Brazil's number 9. He's trusted at that level, and he's proved many times he could do it. Yeah, he's hitting a rough patch at the moment, but I'd still take Richie as my striker.
Okay, and then Jesus. Why Jesus?
Well, I mean, Richarlison scored more goals scored more offside goals last season than real goals.
True.
Maybe he scored. I think he scored 1 Premier League goal last season, and then even then that ended up being in a defeat at home to Bournemouth. Some people can beat Bournemouth in the final minutes, some can't. But on Gabriel Jesus, I mean, he's a player that's discredited for his lack of finishing. Because, I mean, that's all you can really say against him because the rest of his game is so good. But even then, he scored about 11 or 12 goals last season in the league. And that's without considering he was out for about 3 months. Obviously, during the World Cup, some of that. But, I mean, he missed a lot of football. In a few months there, he was still getting back to fitness. So, I don't think there is a real argument, I mean, obviously, if Kane was still here, he'd get into this team willy-nilly because he's one of the best Premier League strikers ever. But I mean, Richarlison, if he'd shown a little bit more form, if we were talking about his Everton days, maybe he has a conversation here. And I mean, obviously he does okay for Brazil, but I mean, Gabriel Jesus is quite clearly the better player.
However, this is a really tough one. These two sides are very evenly matched in a lot of areas, but who do I trust more? Myself or the Brazilian manager himself? It's not me. So, I will be giving this one to a lad who only cost 50 million.
Oh my word.
And it's Richarlison.
I'm sorry, how he scored 1 Premier League goal last season? You're putting him ahead of Gabriel Jesus.
Isn't
he scored more Champions League goals last season than your club in the last 10 years, so we'll take that.
Jesus isn't particularly star-studded either.
Oh my word.
Personally,
this is an outrageously poor opinion.
There was gonna be one.
Outrageous.
And who says I'm not just doing it for the comments?
Yeah, actually with that. Yeah, clickbait title, of course.
But I will be giving this one to Richarlison. And now we have 1, 2, 3, 4 players from Tottenham Hotspur and 7 players from Arsenal. So
7? How do you get 7? I got 5 from Spurs.
Udogie, Romero,
Udogie.
Maddison. Oh, sorry, 5 from Spurs, 6 from Arsenal. Sorry.
Yeah, hang on a minute.
I mean, we all know it's really 4 and 4 again.
Never.
It's 6-5. However, Arsenal have just taken on. However, there is still a chance for Tottenham to come back here because the managers. Who is the better manager out of Ange Postecoglou and Mikel Arteta? Liam, we'll come to you first. Why is Arteta better than the lad who was born somewhere near you Ish, kind of.
Well, listen, if you're going to judge Postecoglou after 5 games in the Premier League and winning trophies in the Scottish League...
The Scottish
Steven
League is
Gerrard,
a prestigious league because Brendan Rodgers can win games there.
Steven Gerrard won a trophy there, and we all know that Steven Gerrard is absolutely terrible manager. So I don't think his trophies really at Celtic can mean anything. I mean, he looks like a decent coach, but I mean, Mikel Arteta has proven himself in the league. He's won the FA Cup, he's won the Community Shield. I mean, obviously it's a Community Shield, it's not... He's won a couple of Community Shields. There's still more trophies than Spurs can say they've won in recent years. But, you know, he's also brought Arsenal very close to a title. He's improved their squad. They're a top team. They've had one of the best points differentials that Arsenal have ever had in the league. Probably more than Spurs have ever got in the league. I can't actually confirm that, but you know. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really an argument here. Arteta coached a fantastic team last season, and Postecoglou's barely started his top managerial career. So I mean, it has to be Arteta, really.
Okay, Spurs news.
Yes, I mean Arteta is a pretty decent manager, but at the end of the day, he is just a whiny little sod, and he complains about everything all the time. Whereas Big Ange is like the dad you never had sort of thing. So, look, he's proved he can do it. I know it was only the Scottish League and the J League. He also managed the Australian national team, I think, and he won the Asian Cup or something similar over there. I'm not sure the specific name, but Ange is one of those sort of managers that you want. He's someone you'd run for a brick wall for. Yes, he's only had 5 games, but he proves his tactics and his way of sort of looking around football works in the Premier League. And obviously Sunday, the North London derby will probably be his biggest test of the season.
Yes.
Away as well so far. So look, Ange, everyone loves him. I think even Liam could admit that. He seems like a top bloke to come to the Premier League. First Australian to manage in the Premier League as well. So it shows that he's come from a small upbringing, only being in Japan 3-4 years ago to being in the Prem now. It's a great rise to fame. So, yeah, look, it's simply a case of, do you want someone who calls you mate every 5 minutes, or a whiny little sod nagging at your side every 5 minutes?
Right. I'm going to have to pick the whiny little sod.
What? Oh my God.
Right.
That might be the most outrageous comment of the night.
Your argument was, he's just a great bloke, so he should be the better manager of this team.
Exactly. That's exactly.
Right.
I can't argue tactics. He's only had 5 games.
Exactly. Give it.
What is that for an opinion?
Give it a year or two,
mate.
Give it. He's turning into Ange himself.
Exactly. He can't help it. He knows he's better.
Mate.
Give it.
Still can't help it.
Mate.
Give it a year or two, and I'd be willing to give Postecoglou time because he needs more to prove himself. 5 games versus statistically the easiest Premier League start is not enough to outdo a manager who, while he might whine a lot, is an innovator because he considers substituting goalkeepers off, and did also come second in the Premier League last year. Turned around an Arsenal side who were abysmal, it's worth saying. And I know it took
They were, but when you get 600 mil or whatever he spent, 600, 700 mil, you're going to expect some sort of change, aren't
they? They needed it. Look at the players who were there to start with.
It's literally a brand new squad.
Wasn't Per Mertesacker still there, for God's sake? The bloke who...
I mean, I'd love to say he was, but I mean, that might be a little bit further in the past. But I mean, we had Socrates and Steffi, Kolasinac, Lichtsteiner. That's 4 players in the defence, you know, Bellerin, Maitland-Niles, Torreira. It's just so much waffle in that team. Ozil, Alba, Lacazette. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I've got to give this one to Arteta. I like Postecoglou and I think he's going to do good things, but he needs a bit more time. And just because he's a top bloke, that doesn't make him a better manager, sadly. You know,
Yes, it does.
I love my dad to pieces. Doesn't mean he'll be the best Premier League manager to ever, grace the earth. So, on that note, I will be giving it to Arteta, and we'll take another short break here after one of the longest segments I think we've ever done. Before we come back to determine who will win the North London derby. Right, we are back from another short break to come back and discuss the North London derby. However, before we do that, I wanted to ask you both who one player you would take from the opposing side of North London would be. So we'll start with you, Spurs News. Looking through the Arsenal squad, if you could take one player out of it to come and play for Tottenham, who would you take?
Yeah, so look, I've got to admit, Arsenal do have some good players. And there is some top quality in their squad. There's probably only two that I pick from, which is Odegaard and Saka, which probably won't come as much as a surprise. If you'd asked me last season, I probably would have said Odegaard solely for the fact his creative sort of responsibilities. I would have said Odegaard last season. However, after signing James Maddison, we've now got that sort of player in the Spurs team. I know we have just signed Brennan Johnson, but when you look at Saka is just a different breed.
Mm-hmm.
He's a top player, and he's still incredibly young. He's so versatile in the way he plays, cutting in on his left, going down the sort of byline on his right. He does everything. So seeing him play for England as well, you can't miss his quality. So I'm going to have to say Saka.
Okay, there we go. Saka to Spurs. And then Liam, if you're looking through that Spurs squad, who would you sign? Because, I mean, most of them have won a trophy before, which could offer some experience to Arsenal. Because, again, a lot of players in Arsenal squad haven't won a trophy. If they won that trophy, Spurs not, a completely different question. But a lot of them have won a trophy, which a lot of players at Arsenal, you're looking at the squad at the moment, there is a lot of inexperience in there with a lot of players, haven't actually experienced any success, bar promotions or whatever. So, if you wanted to take a player from Spurs squad to come and join the Gunners, who would you pick and why?
Well, I mean, I just threw up in that little bit next to my desk, imagining Saka in a Spurs shirt.
I can't see it.
I mean, you say kissing the badge, and I was like, it's got to be Saka.
Yeah, like that was really just rubbing salt on the wound saying that, But I think I'd have to say, I mean, there aren't many players at Spurs that I'd really want in Arsenal's team at all. But I mean, one of the players I can't help but admire is James Maddison. And I think we've got those two midfield slots, and Odegaard obviously fits one of them. And the other side is a little bit more contentious at the moment, just because Xhaka's left that role. He was very consistent and a very good player there, and now the players that are fighting for that role aren't exactly reliable or proven yet. I think Vieira's looked really good at times. Declan Rice has played there when Partey was fit, and Kai Havertz obviously he's taken his time to get used to that midfield role, to say the least. And I mean, he may end up being a top player in the future, but I mean, if I had the option to switch him and James Maddison right now, I'd probably take it.
Okay, there we go then. So Maddison to Arsenal and Saka to Spurs. Maddison to Arsenal.
You can use Twitter absolutely freely at Arsenal as long as you keep banging on about Gareth Bale's ears. I'd be happy to hear that.
I'm going to be honest, I completely forgot Havertz existed.
Also, don't tell Maddison to use Twitter freely, because God.
Are you sure you don't want to pick Havertz for Spurs?
I'm sure. I'm sure.
They'll give you money to take him at this point. And
he'd be a better number 9 than Richarlison.
Seriously, 70 million? Who thought that was a good idea?
Mikel Arteta, super Mikel Arteta, we trust him.
Is he so super after that signing? I'm not sure. North London derby time then, lads. So obviously both of your teams come up against each other tomorrow, as if you listen to this, hopefully. Where will this game be won or lost for both sides? We'll start with you, Spurs News. Where are you looking in the Arsenal side where, you could win that game, and where within your own side you're looking at it sort of going, I'm a little bit scared for that position?
Yeah, so I was bigging him up in the previous segment, but I still do think that Porro, if we're looking at a defensive line as a whole and the defensive abilities of the other players, Porro is probably the weakest one of that four. And coming up against, I can't remember if Martinelli's injured or what, but if it is Martinelli that plays...
Martinelli,
that's a new one.
Whatever his name is, I don't even pay that much attention to If he does come up against him, look, it's going to be a bit of a struggle because he's a rapid player, a quick player. Porro is as well, but his defensive abilities come into question there. That's why I'm interested to see whether Porro actually plays. Maybe we go with Emerson, a bit more of a defensive player. But I think that right side could be exploited a little bit if they wanted to.
Okay, there we go. And then Liam, where are you looking at this game to possibly be won and lost for your own Arsenal side?
I'm actually very confident in the team we're probably going to put out. I mean, I think the area that would concern me the most is probably a player that's lacking in confidence in Kai Havertz. I think he actually looked quite good against PSV. It's probably the best game he's played so far. But we saw against Man United, he was the one that gave away the ball in the build-up to the Marcus Rashford goal. And but besides that, I'm really happy with who we're playing. I'm not really concerned. Obviously, Zinchenko, the way he plays, he can be a little bit of a worry, and Kulusevski can be a threat cutting inside. And obviously, Son's a top player, but I really do back Ben White. And in terms of where it can be won, it's obvious we've got so much talent in that team, but I think the main player I'd say is Gabriel Jesus coming back to the team. He's made us look a lot more fluid, and he really gets that attack going. So I think Gabriel Jesus is going to be key, and obviously the player that's going to be coming in for Martinelli is very likely going to be Leandro Trossard, who's looked very sharp in the last few games, and I think he will give Pedro Porro or Emerson Royale, whoever they play at right back, a lot of problems, regardless of his lack of pace necessarily, but he's just such a clever player who'll give problems to any fullback he faces.
For sure. And then penultimately, how do we see this game going, lads? We'll start with you, Spurs News. How do you think this massive game, Postecoglou's first test, how do you see it going?
I think it's going to be probably one of the closest North London derbies in recent history. Obviously, being away, there's always a disadvantage, whether that be us going to Arsenal or Arsenal coming to us. There's always going to be that slight sort of distraction there. I'm confident in Spurs' ability. We've got momentum, but so have Arsenal. I'm hoping Ange proper gets them going for tomorrow, because in recent times with Jose and Conte, we just haven't really looked up for it. We haven't treated it like the derby we know it is, and the fans treat it like literally life or death. So I do see either a draw or a win, but I'm always going to back my team. I'm always going to probably say a 2-1 win maybe. I do think we'll let a goal in. Not sure how, maybe down that right side for us, as I said, but I do hope and I do think that Spurs will come out with a win.
Okay, and then Liam, how are you looking at it for your Arsenal side? How do you think it's going to go, and your score prediction as well, please?
I mean, I agree with him in terms of I do think it could be a very, very close game, and I think more just a highly competitive game, because I think he'd also agree that Spurs, the last few times they came to the Emirates, they just haven't looked particularly competitive. Like, the way that they've set up has been very defensive, and they just look, just pretty happy to just roll on their side and let us through. But I think it'd be very interesting, but I still back us with our home form, especially against Spurs, and the way we've been playing, and the fact that Spurs will come at us, I think actually benefits us more than it does harm us. Obviously, that does mean there'll be a little bit more attacking threat from the opposition, but I think the more space that you give that attack of ours, the more we can hurt you. So I do think we'll come out with a win, and I'll be quite surprised if Spurs do get anything from this game. I would predict, a solid 3-0.
3-0?
Oh no, you know what? 3-1.
3-1. Okay.
I imagine it will be close, and maybe that third goal will come quite late. But I think.
Wow, there we go then. A 3-1 victory, a 2-1 victory. Ooh, that's a difficult one. My prediction, I think it's gonna be a really tight game. I think Spurs will open the scoring. I can see it. I can see an early Richarlison goal. I can see Saka equalising just before half time. Arsenal come out in the second half fighting, score again through Declan Rice. And then I think late in the game, I think Heung-min Son will pop up for Spurs to equalise at 2-2. And I am going to stay directly in the middle of that fence.
Unbelievable.
Disgraceful. Really.
It's too easy. But yeah, there we go. That is the end of this podcast. A very late recorded podcast. It's 11 o'clock as we're finishing up. So thank you to these two lads. Well, it's 11 o'clock for us Spurs News. Liam's going on with his day now. He's probably just opened his morning coffee and had his Weetabix as we've been recording. But yes, thank you to both of you for coming on. Spurs News, we'll start with you. Where can people find you at home?
Yes, so on Instagram, _Spurs_news. Heading towards 23k now, so doing really, really well. Flying. So yeah, any support over there would be really appreciated.
Absolutely. And then Liam, obviously, if/when the return to the new Arsenal Fan Nation page does happen, where can people find you?
Yeah, so I do still have a newly created page, AFC Fan Nation 2, if you want to go follow me on Instagram, but there's not much activity going on there. But if you do want to hear from me, I am on Twitter at the Kiwi Gunner. So do follow me on there. I do give my opinions, and
I've seen some of them.
They're probably a little bit outrageous, but I mean, if you want to hear me ramble on like I have today, then feel free to follow me on there.
I'm pretty sure I saw a tweet about Piers Morgan as well at one point, which made me sit there and have a little giggle to myself.
Probably.
Did definitely make me reminisce about some old removed footage from podcasts. But yes, there we go. There is another podcast in the bank. I hope you all at home have enjoyed. If you have, make sure to smash the like button. Make sure to comment down below your thoughts. Who do you think is going to win the North London derby? And also subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. And I'll catch you all again in the next video. See ya.